All right, we'll go ahead and get started this evening, and we'll start with roll call.
Rob Keller.
Here.
Don Kramer.
Here.
Ben Metzger.
Here.
Tim Mills.
Here.
Mac Rankin.
Here.
Ryan Worley. Here. And Sue Wilson.
Here.
And we have our good news items first. All of those are listed in your board packet there. So.
Another good news item that we have is it is School Board Month. So in front of you, there's a note from Art, there's a certificate thanking you for your service, and then a little small token of appreciation. So we appreciate all you do for the district, and that's your pay.
He's opened it, so we all know. He doesn't have to open it.
So, no, we do appreciate everything you do. And
Platinum. Platinum.
I'm sure I can lose this in about a week, like all my other coffee mugs.
So thank you very much.
All right. Any board member reports or anything?
Real quick, we had the high school blood drive Wednesday. I'm trying to get into my email here. There was 49 people that signed up to donate, and 47 and 39 that were actually able to. Of those 39, 33 of them are first-time donors, most of them being high school students. So just wanted to pass on my congratulations and appreciation to them.
Fun?
Yeah.
Yeah, had a lot of fun.
All my students already had jobs. So I was like, oh, well, let's get creative on how to ask these questions. But they did a really good job. They did a good job.
I enjoyed that very, very much.
What was that? I missed it.
The mock interviews? Yeah, so I didn't sign up for it originally, but I had an opportunity to fill in, and I just absolutely loved it. Like, that was a blast.
All right. Anything else from any board members? All right. Any delegations, petitions, applications?
You don't have anybody signed up. Does anybody wanting to sign up?
Okay. Next is our consent agenda.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Mac. Second by Ryan. Any further discussion by the board? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Next is our presentations. I think Laura's here. Are we doing it now or later?
Yeah, with the
Later.
task force, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Next is, if you go down to page 23 of 61, Board Policy Committee. Mac is going to join the policy committee. So we just need a vote or to just approve that by the board.
I'll make a motion if you wanna get on yourself on
Yep.
policy. Go ahead. I'll make a motion that we had bring it to the policy committee.
Motion made by Sue, second by Tim. All those in favor say aye. Or any discussion by the board?
I think Max just heard how exciting it was.
Yeah, I think
To be truthful, I want to get as much knowledge as I can for a few other boards that I sit on. So I'd like to have the opportunity to sit on that policy committee as well.
All those in favor say
No, I just have a question, not about that at all. Just so on any committee that we have, we can't have more than 3 board members on it, right? Right.
If you have 4, we'd have to have a meeting because that would be a quorum.
Right, that's what I thought. Okay. Yeah. There was only 2, so it was no big deal. I just wanted to double check that. Okay.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Next is the School Improvement Advisory Committee meeting report.
The SIAC committee met for the final time for this year, and remember that group had a 2-year commitment. So I'll be speaking with the new superintendent, Ted, and seeing how he wants to approach the SIAC committee for the following year in terms of his involvement and what direction he might want to take that. They do have requirements from the state for things that they do look at. As an example on here, looking at educational goals and data is one of the things that the School Improvement Committee comes together on. And from their discussion, it's a great group and it has students involved with it also, and their perspective is really interesting. But some of their suggestions here in terms of what they look at from data, those were then taken back to the building principals and shared with them. Each building principal goes through a process in setting building goals, and we make sure those are in alignment with the district needs. And so those were communicated out. And one thing in particular, from the conditions for learning reports, they want some follow-up information on that they were interested in to just see, okay, so how is that data utilized at the building levels? And with that, do they then follow up with the students to get more information and more conversation going about that particular survey from the state? And then if you remember the conditions for learning report, that one talks about things such as relationships between teachers to students, student to student. Do they feel they have a safe learning environment? All of those things that contribute to them learning at very high levels. So that was our final report for this year, and then we'll go back through a re-identification process, seeking new members, and I'm sure we'll have some continuing members that will apply again for the next year.
Did your attendance stay pretty good?
We had in between 50 to 60% of the people who committed to the 2 years return regularly.
Okay.
Sometimes the sickness came into effect with COVID, and we know the spring meeting is typically more of our lowest attended meeting. So I think any meetings that we would have probably need to occur before February.
Okay.
Just because there's so many events that come up. Sometimes we want to run into weather issues too,
Yeah.
but we could always try to have another makeup date
Sure.
if necessary. So that might be some things to consider too as you continue with your work sessions and setting your district goals as a board. That might be another group that could help facilitate some of your needs.
And did you like the number of meetings was appropriate?
It
you
really
felt?
worked out well for continuity.
Okay.
And I think that 2-year commitment that we did
Yeah.
also didn't, for example, burn people out.
Yeah.
But it allowed them enough to get involved.
Sure.
And I have 2 recommendations from the middle school already for students that want to
Oh, okay.
participate for the next
Good.
year. So,
Cool. Any questions for Annette? Thanks, Annette. All right. Next is the issuance of the 2022-2023 administration contracts and benefits, which we're going to table due to a pending resignation there. So we'll table it.
It's meeting with all the other ones, so. But we do need a motion and a second to do that.
We need a motion to table it?
Yes.
Okay.
Make a motion to table the issuance of the 2022-2023 administrative contracts and benefits.
Motion made by Matt
I'll
to
second.
table, seconded by Sue. Any further discussion by the board? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Next is the board HR update. Committee meeting update.
We do not have a committee meeting, we just have a.
Okay, so just open positions, that's it?
Yep, so, we have an anticipated resignation in that principal for Emerson, that's not on the list, but otherwise, that's what it looks like.
And you've got-
Part-time PE and New Year's.
You've already got good applications.
Yeah, it's been open since, the principal position's been open since Saturday, and we've got 9 applicants so far.
When are those interviews scheduled?
Next Thursday, so we close on Sunday, we'll do some review and pre-screening, and then have 3 final candidates in on the 19th.
Any questions for Mimi on anything? Okay. This is the board technology committee meeting report. We had a lot on that.
So, kind of a heavy meeting, right?
It's all here, right?
Yep. So I did put a packet by each one of your tables. I intended to include those presentations in the notes, and somehow I didn't get those uploaded, so that was,
Okay, I like paper, right?
you know how much I just love paper, right?
I'm impressed you actually copied it on.
Does anybody want to take this, or? It was kind of,
I
go
can
for it,
start.
Sue, go for it.
just constantly Ray's been able to go to some conferences that are just looking at, are we protected from the email perspective from kids and how they search the internet, and are our teachers protected, are our passwords protected? Basically, is our school district protected as best as we know how to try to make sure that our information is safe, personal information is safe, and everything like that. So some of these conferences just talked about kind of what we're doing at Indianola right now is right where we need to be, as far as the work Ray and his group has already done on getting us to where we are protected and safe. But is there something we could go ahead and further do? Yes. And so Ray's looking at, okay, how do we now take kind of the next step into cybersecurity and go from there? So it's just a lot of information that he talked about on, I think he talked about on passwords, right? Like how important it is to protect us with passwords and stuff like that, and going into the,
Multi-factor authentication.
yeah, yep, and going into the two, what is it, the code?
Two-factor authentication or multi-factor authentication.
So instead of just giving random passwords, you have to have a code and it needs to be sent somewhere to make sure
Which
that
all of
that's.
you guys should have gotten that already, right? Everybody did.
So, what else, Mac?
The copier and printer replacement RFP was sent out. We talked a little bit about that. Would replace all of the building printers and copy machines, including that of the print shop. Hopefully, we'll have an update at the next meeting on kind of what those RFPs look like. So excited to get those machines replaced for our staff.
Any questions for anyone on IT committee or for Ray?
Oh, I think we did talk, we spent a lot of time too on like how to train our staff on phishing emails, like what they should and shouldn't be clicking on and everything like that. And so really, can we find time in their schedule to really train them on, like, I'm just learning, but like through the email, I finally look at the name, and a lot of times the name doesn't even make sense, and it's like, don't click on that email, even if it says, hey, new curriculum. But it does, so we talked a lot about how do we make sure our teachers are trained to know what they should and shouldn't be clicking on.
There's a couple programs we'll be looking at for ongoing training for staff. Probably just something else to add here. You probably read that in the notes, but I am looking at taking us down the path of a cybersecurity audit and then eventually a penetration test as well. So there may be a contract to approve at some point down the road here, but right at this point I have a couple proposals that I'm looking over, so maybe even as early as the next board meeting.
All right, thanks, Ray. Moving on to page, it's the 2021-2022 certified budget amendment. Go ahead, John.
Yep, we talked about this several months in a row, saying that we would be increasing. And it's, again, no taxes or nothing increases in taxes. It's just we've had different expenses now with these COVID funds. And I kind of bumped it up high enough that we know that we'll be covered with any of the expenses that we may have through June 30th. So again, it doesn't affect anything, but just keeps us under the limit with when we do our audit. Our audit comes through, so.
Recommendations to set that date that's listed in there. We just need a recommendation for that.
Recommend that we set May 24th, 2022 at 5:30 p.m. as a date and time for the 2021 to 22 certified budget amendment.
Recommendation made by Tim,
Second.
seconded by Donna. Any further discussion by the board? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Next is the task force recommendation on the high school plan.
Thank you, guys. I'm here to help the task force make a recommendation tonight. I'm Laura Peterson, educational planner with Envision, an Indianola resident, and I have Seth Laitman and Tyler Till here to help answer any questions you guys might have. I'm going to keep the presentation relatively short because we have had a lot of information over the last year. But feel free as we go to ask questions. I have a lot of the supporting information. Just a reminder on process, this really started back in 2019 when you did a district facilities-wide master plan, or facilities assessment to understand all of your buildings. And then we started this process in 2021 looking at a high school master plan, really with a lot of student and staff surveys and listening sessions with students and staff, and started to develop options. At that time when we brought those options to you, we said this is a bigger community discussion, we need to reach out. So at that time we started a community task force really at the beginning of this school year. That task force has looked at the different options, gained feedback from students and staff, and then really for the last month and a half we've been doing community input sessions. So we've had 2 broad community meetings. I've been to Rotary and Young Professionals and PTA to really get additional information. We've had a website that's had all of the information as well as video content for those that couldn't make the meetings, and really try to get feedback on the 3 options that we laid out. The task force met last week and kind of came up with their recommendation, presenting that to you tonight. If we decide to move forward, we would move forward with petitions and signatures, and we'll talk a little bit about next steps. And the earliest we could go is for a September 13th bond referendum. So just a reminder, the 3 options that we were looking at, one was really add onto the high school where we need to, and then renovate as much as we can to make the building, try to make it make sense again, but generally keep the high school as it is today, but with significant renovations. Option B was to keep the pieces of the high school that generally make sense, the auditorium, north gym, music, and CTE spaces, and then build to the west of the school, replacing about 2/3 of the school. Replace 2/3 of the school kind of over time. And then C was a new high school, which is really a benchmark. We don't have a design for it, but really looking at the cost and kind of overall square footage for that option. Just a reminder about kind of the option comparison. So option A was a $71 to $78 million plan, B 94 to 100 million, and C was 132 to 144 million. Piper Sandler helped to do some financial projections for the district, and really 142 was the maximum the district could possibly have through bonding capacity and save funding kind of over 10 years. You can see the different drivers that we looked at options for kind of future growth, reducing vertical transitions, making the building make sense again, providing 21st century learning environments, and also looking at the construction disruption during to learning during construction. So what have we heard? We've gotten quite a bit of feedback over the last month and a half. I think the first thing is generally we've heard support to do something. We've had very few people that have said, meh, it's fine how it is today, no need to move forward. Through kind of surveys and community outreach, we heard, yes, we should be looking at this plan, or even some people, we should have been looking at this a few years ago. So generally support to do something was widely heard. Option A, what we heard was that generally people didn't believe that it supported the long-term growth of our community. We know that slow and steady growth has happened, and generally people felt that was going to continue to happen, and felt that that plan didn't really support that kind of long-term. Also, there were some fundamental issues of the building, the connectivity, circulation, just the general appearance and pride in the building that couldn't really be met with that option, while we could provide a new 21st century learning environment in that space. And generally with the price tag of $71 to $78 million, we heard that the impact that we were going to be able to make was not worth the price tag that option would have. And probably the biggest drawback from that option that we heard from parents specifically and teachers was trying to move through a renovation project while keeping kids in classrooms was going to have a significant disruption to learning over a 4 or 5 year time frame for construction. Option C, new school, we actually heard a lot more positive feedback for that option than I think we anticipated going into this. People thought it was an exciting vision for the future of our community and could really support us well into the future. I think though we heard very quickly that it would take 100% of our financial capacity for the next 10 years in order to support that option. You know, we're right up against $142 million, and generally it feels like the elementary school and middle school are going to have needs. We will have other needs, specifically if we continue to grow, and felt that using all of those funds was maybe not the most fiscally responsible option. We also heard a lot about the location of the existing high school. Generally, people like where it is within our community, and we couldn't tell people where a new school would be. We know that we would need about 60 acres, and generally that's going to be somewhere on the edge of town, and we wouldn't be able couldn't answer that today. So if we wanted to move forward with that option, we'd have to dig in and really understand that. I think also the question is, what would we do with the existing high school if we did build a new high school? There's a lot of different options you could look at, but that was a big question people had. Specifically the money that we spent there. We put a lot of dollars into it as a community over the last 60 years and felt that there's still some value left in that structure. And lastly, I think also it's important to understand that that project was also have to be done in phases, similarly to the option B that ultimately is the recommendation right now, because you don't have access to all of those funds at one time. So more than likely we'd have to build an academic portion and then come and build athletics and fine arts, or we'd have to just wait until about 2028 to move into that, which is actually how this building was built. They built just the academic portion and bused kids back and forth to have gym, fine arts, and shop for about 2 or 3 years before they built the East Gym portion of the building. So generally, the task force recommendation will be to move forward with option B. If anyone has questions about it when we get to kind of the end, you can feel free, we can go back and look at it and ask any questions. But just a reminder, it's a 2-story academic addition really to the west of the building, a new community commons that runs to the west of the auditorium and gym, athletics expansion to the north and kitchen addition to the north, and then a new entry on the south, and also CTE addition off to the east. Then we'd come back and take off all of the existing 1-story piece of the building that's on the south side and redevelop parking as part of that. So option B, we generally have heard broad support for that one. We've done a lot of polls at every meeting that we've had, and generally this has been the option the most supported. People felt that it fixed the fundamental issue in the building, but also supported long-term growth. Our current high school numbers are between 1,100 and 1,150, and this option plans for growth up to 1,400, which is about 20% growth from where we're at with students today. Additionally, there's plans to have additional classrooms added on if we needed to past 1,400 students. Felt that it provided a learning environment that supports future needs. We've had an educational leadership team that's taken a look at it, generally excited about the opportunities it could provide. Maximizes the investments that we've already made at the high schools, some of this recent work at auditorium and gym spaces, and mostly leaves financial capacity for the unknowns of the district-wide future. So if we do grow and we need additional elementary capacity or middle school capacity, that we would have the ability to do so. Generally, it reduced the disruption on learning during construction. We do know that we're going to be building on top of parking, and so parking for community events will be hard during construction. We'll have to work through that. But generally keeping kids and teachers in classrooms can be achieved with the option. And I think the next thing to just remember is that these are broad options and approaches right now. We're probably 5% of the way through design on this, and so there's a lot of details that still need to be worked out. And through community meetings, we've had a lot of great input. So a few of the things that we really need to focus on. One, we've heard from the auditorium group that there's some things with how we get older people that have mobility issues in very easily that we need to look through, as well as access to the stage to bring kind of large goods in. So we're meeting with them hopefully later this week to start working through that. We've also understand that we need to move and replace tennis courts. Those were built in about 2016. So by the time we would open in 2026, we'd be about halfway through the life. Usually you can get about 20 years out of a tennis court. So we'd be about halfway through the life of those. So that would be kind of the major piece that maybe you've done recently that we'd have to be replacing as part of this project. And also people want to understand how the parking lot works. So I can tell you that we know we'll be at positive parking spots, but people want to see more about how am I going to drive through? Where's my drop-off spot going to be as a teacher? Where am I going to park? Where's it going to be close to my classroom? So those are kind of the next development levels as we move forward with an option that we would take a look at. These are the survey results from the community. Generally, we asked first, which option do you think is best for students? And you can see B got the most support there. Over 50% said the option they thought was best for students. Next, we said, which is most likely to gain community support? So there you can see we're almost 60% on option B, and then also about 30% I think are thinking about our somewhat conservative community that maybe option A is what would be the easiest to get past. And then lastly, we asked, what option do you think is the best long-term plan? And you can see a pretty even split between option B and option C for really long-term viability. Just have 2 slides left. We had a lot of conversation at the task force about why now is this really the right time to be doing this. Everyone's heard in the news about construction costs. So you can see back in 1960, which is when the original building was starting to be built, you can see general inflation is the black line, whereas construction costs is the orangish reddish line. And what we know is historically construction costs will always outpace, or construction inflation will always outpace general inflation. Specifically, if you go back to 2010, you can see how those lines are diverging. And so what I can tell you is that whatever we do will not be cheaper tomorrow than it is today or in a few years. Definitely not the reason to move forward with a plan if we don't think it's the right plan, but we do know that construction costs will continue to go up. Hopefully they're plateauing and we won't see the 20% inflation we've seen over the last year, but generally hoping to get back to about a 4 to 5% annual construction inflation. So here you can see kind of based off of if we wait a year, 5 years, 10 years, kind of what the cost difference would be. Or if we would have gone 5 years ago with this, it'd be about 75% of the cost that it is today. And then lastly, here's just a few timelines. You can move forward in September. If we move forward in September and it were to pass, you move into the phase 1, which is really all the academic and community and kitchen piece in fall of 2026, and the athletic expansion in fall of 2028. If you fail in September, you can't go until the next September with how bond referendums are laid out. So that would push everything back a year. If you waited and decided to go in March, you'd also be pushed to 2027 and 2029 just with how construction sequences, and we can only really open schools 1 time a year, so we have to hit that kind of fall timeline. If we were to go in March and fail, then you can see kind of all of the other things that kind of pace out different scenarios if you want to come back and look at any of those. I think. Generally, next steps, if you do receive the recommendation tonight, would be the additional option development. People want to see images. They want to understand what it's going to look like, and we started to develop those and digging into some of the details. We'd go through, and John would work to finalize with the actual bond amount, and we would work on a petition language. That petition would then get circulated in the community, and if they got enough signatures, that would then come to the school board for you to be able to call an election if you accepted that petition. And then the summer would be filled with additional communication, outreach, information sessions, making sure people got their questions answered, and ultimately possibly go to a September vote. So that's all I had. So whatever questions you guys have or questions for Seth or Tyler.
You guys have any questions for Laura, Seth, or Tyler?
One, on the, when you were showing the figures at the beginning on the completely new high school, that figure doesn't include acquiring the land.
Correct. No land acquisition
So I
is
think
part
that's
of that.
important for anybody listening to understand that that's just the building on top of, then you would have a high school that we've just done a ton of work on with how to plan for that as well. So I just wanted to clarify that for anybody listening, looking at those numbers, that of course, with 60 acres, I'm going to guess that's not very cheap right now. So,
Yeah, right.
So I just wanted to point that out. And then one other, I know there's been some comments made about this planned boxing in the auditorium. We've done a lot of recent work to the auditorium. It's basically brand new, and just for comparison's sakes, I think our auditorium seats over 700.
Mm-hmm.
In Valleys, I think is around 900, and they're almost double our enrollment. So I think it's, if you look at our growth over the last 20 years, I think the size of our auditorium is sustainable into the future and is practically brand new.
I think that a typical planning number we use is that your auditorium should be able to have about half of your student body in it. And so if we're planning for 1,400, it does support our current needs. I do think a good part, though, that came out of a lot of those conversations was we call this option replace in place. Well, we're only replacing about 2/3 of the school, and we should look ahead and understand in 20, 30 years when we want to replace the other portion of the school, what the plan for that is. And so I should have added that to kind of our additional development. It's just we should have a phased plan of how that could happen if we do need to replace fine arts or CTE, any of those spaces.
Captain Tyler, thanks for taking time out of your guys' schedule to be on that committee. Appreciate that.
Is there anything you guys want to say that you thought about the meetings or with the representation of the people that were in those meetings and what general thoughts were, or?
There was a lot of really good discussion. A lot of it centering around taxes and impact on taxes and sharing that message. So that was something I know the committee was really mindful of, is the spending that's happened in the community from the county and then future city spending and how something like this might feel to residents. And so that was a really important piece to our conversations, was the message of this keeping our taxes at the rate that we're currently spending with our levy rate today. So that was a huge piece of what we talked about. And then I know that our sentiment has been that growth will continue at a slow and steady pace. But what happens if we experience more explosive growth, like maybe Norwalk or Waukee has happened? So that was also a big piece to our conversations there, but felt that this option was one that gave us the best with the least impact on taxes and spending and things like that, to give us what the school district is needing and what the current building is really lacking.
Yeah, and kind of touch on that more. The levy rate is the big part that, when you talk about taxes, everybody's property taxes are going to continue to go up with property values going up. But with the levy rate staying the way it is, that's not changing with this. So that's a big part for discussion moving forward with the general public. And stepping back, looking at it from a task force as our position, is to listen to the teachers, the students, the community, all the different meetings, and with the general consensus of option B, it fit all of our questions and ideas moving forward.
Thank you both. Thanks to the entire task force for what you guys did, the time you spent on it. So. Any other questions for Laura from any of the board members right now? You guys, if not, you do have correspondence on your desk there from a community member that had just reached out just with some thoughts and a vision there for a different way to do things. If you guys want to take time, just a few minutes to look through that and stuff, that conversation is back and forth from Art and then Laura answering those questions and kind of all the way up till today. So that information is there. And if you have any questions, Jonna is here and Laura to be able to answer questions about that. Look through that for a couple minutes before we move forward. That's fine with me. Jonna, is there anything else while we're looking through this? Is there anything else that you think is important for us to know in regards to finances and how this plays out? Like maybe considering this information in front of us, the information here, and then also like what, just the future of the district. Like this, like Laura had said, option C would tie up all of our funds. Right. We would have no other money.
This next, what's scheduled?
Ray, I think if you go to the
capacity.
last, maybe the
There's a
last
finance,
slide.
there's a finance piece on this.
Yep.
Or if you can make it a little bit bigger. So if you look at this, we still have, so again, the PEPAL and the voted PEPAL, the top under the dark purple, that we wouldn't touch. We use that for maintenance, we use it for buses, we use it for a lot of different things, and we use it. And, you know, right now, we're using some of that for the new auxiliary building. We're tying that, so that would be tied up with save bonds and the GO bonds is really the way this needs to go. And as you look at below the ongoing cost line, it says the save bonds at 75%. We still would keep some that would be used for other pieces, like technology is in that the piece of ongoing costs. So the 19.9, you know, in 2024 would be what we would bond for using that penny sales tax. The GO bonds, as you can see, it kind of, little by little, we work towards that, but the way that our valuations, depending on how they grow, that could change a little bit. Probably not drastically, but it gives us a path forward to look at the full package. And then the realism that it's gonna take, since 8 years, to get done.
And we know that we're gonna have other projects come up. You know, we will have that. I mean, we've discussed those things already as a board of the future, especially at the lower levels there of education. So that, we know that that's gonna be in front of us. So I can't strap us like that. I can't think to strap us that much, you know, to go to that full amount there. Because that would prevent us from doing those other plans there down the road. So,
Rob, I'm glad that you said that, because that was one of the things I was thinking through, and that was part of nearly every discussion, was why, one of the big reasons why B made sense to us was not handcuffing us from district needs at other buildings. And this really accomplishes that and gives you the flexibility. So that was a really big piece of all of our discussions, was not handcuffing the district for future needs.
and that's not us choosing to stop there. That's law. We cannot go above that bonding
Right.
capacity, so.
I mean, I think this is a great idea. It would be great for a long-range vision. I like this idea a lot. I just don't know. You know, I mean, we need the school part of it. And I don't know how much the community will get behind all of it. But I think it's a great vision and a great long-range planning idea.
Any other questions for Jonna, for Laura?
I haven't had a whole lot of time, I guess, to read through the email correspondence, but Mike, does the city have interest in a swap?
No idea.
Okay.
So if the balloon field is out by there, Mike, is that what you were thinking that?
The Pickard Park. All of Pickard Park.
Okay, the recommendation, if you guys, if you don't have anything else, the recommendation this evening is to receive that recommendation by the committee or the task force, that we'd be voting to receive that. Is that what we'd recommend?
Yeah.
Wouldn't be that full recommendation. We would, how would we word that, Jonah, in the
It's
correct?
two things, I think. It's two things, right? You're recommending a replace-in-place option as recommended by the task force, and you're recommending that it go to referendum vote on September 13th, right?
And that's what the task force is recommending. So what you would do as a board would receive that, and then, I guess it's more of, it's not approving it because it's really not an approval thing, but it's to receive it and then probably move forward working with Laura, and as we look towards a September vote, we need to get moving. If that
I'm okay
makes
with
sense to choose.
receiving that recommendation. I'm not okay with that vote date. I think I would like to work towards that, but I don't want to, this doesn't handcuff us to that.
No, because you're not approving. I mean, it's just that's what they have brought to you. And timeline, I don't know, Laura, have you got a timeline that pretty much breaks it down?
So you would have to receive the petition, typically it's the middle to end of July. And so we would take the time to draft the language, circulate the petition, and that would more than likely come to your July board meeting. And that would be the actual step of accepting that position or petition and calling for election is kind of the official time. So if between now and then we feel like the community is not ready to move forward, we haven't taken any actions that strap us to moving forward in September.
Okay.
And I don't think it hurts to receive because they did all the work.
Yeah.
And now they're giving that to you to
Yeah.
move to the next step.
I just want to make sure we're not handcuffed to that date. Like if we do need to go to a March date, we have that option because we have a new superintendent coming in.
Yeah. I think that June, the rest of this month, June, the beginning of July, we would continue with the community outreach that we've been trying to do to get the word out. You know, we talked about we need to go and present at the village, and we need to get out at balloons and farmers markets and things like that this summer. It's been very easy to get, you know, the attention of people related to the school, but there's a whole nother section of our community we're trying to do outreach. So I think we would continue that, and hopefully by June or July, Rob, we would know more about kind of the bigger temperature of the community.
Okay.
But we would move forward with language for the petition specifically for this option.
Okay.
How many signatures do you need?
It's a quarter of your last school board election, so I haven't, Art had a call into the auditor about that.
150?
Would you guys be able to outline the pros and cons versus taking a September vote versus a March vote? Or do you know that already, or is that something you guys could look at, looking at the Indianola community?
Yeah, there's September, sometimes the hardest part can be to get people's attention with summer. I think that we've done a good job of trying to start this spring so that so we're not asking them to understand all of it. I do think that if we wait till March, you can see we're going to be a school year behind in opening, just with how construction schedules and design sequence. But it would give us more time to get out in the community. I do think we've had good momentum. People are hearing about it, people are supportive. But we could do additional work for a March one. So that's really the kind of pros and cons, is really timing. We also know that construction costs will go up in that 6 months, but also maybe it will level off and some of our procurement issues will go away. But we have a full year of design work to do after we approve a bond. So if we were to go in September, we wouldn't be bidding it until September of 2023.
So the language we would be getting would be forthcoming, I guess, but that language is going to be a number then, an amount for the bond.
Mm-hmm. So it'll be an amount for the actual general obligation bond. It wouldn't include the SAVE funds that you're going to have as part of it.
So, like, looking what we just experienced with the auxiliary services building, how confident will you guys be in that number that's not going to be an additional 20% above and beyond that?
Yeah, I think that we've built in quite a bit of contingency for bidding just based off of the unknown environment now and what we've gone through in the last year. We've also escalated these prices out to a $25. So we've already built in quite a bit of escalation as part of these dollars. And then I would just say that we need to work with Jonna and Piper Sandler in understanding what our comfort is, knowing that we're only this much through design and where should we set that so that the district has the ability to work in those kind of parameters. So we've been doing it with a lot of other bonds. We had some bonds that passed in 2020 and then we hit inflation, and you only get to ask the taxpayers once. And so we'll figure out how to work with that number.
Okay. Any other questions for Laura?
Just in regards to timing, that was a discussion at our last meeting, and it was 100% unanimous from the task force with the urgency of doing it sooner than later.
Okay.
So that was just our input. So I'm sure you'll hear lots of input from many other folks, but that was where the task force came in, it was to push for an earlier vote date.
I think that the discussion was that they didn't see a pro to the school district of waiting, but getting the word out additionally could be that pro. We know that no matter when we go, it's hard to get people's attention until a vote gets close. So,
If you had to guess what the cost addition would be in that 1 year waiting period, I mean, do you think it's 1 million, do you think it's 5 million, or somewhere in between?
can you go to the Why Now slide, Ray?
I thought I saw something.
So if we presume a 4% construction escalation in the next year, the next one more up, the other way, about 4 million more.
What's your hesitation with that?
Just to make sure that we've really flushed this through. I know we have a good task force that's looked at it, but that's a small representation of the Indianola community. We just had a volatile city council session there where some things happened that I think the public has to really get behind this. I mean, we wanted this from the very beginning. We wanted this to be public driven. And I want to know that this is public driven, not just something we're dreaming up and stuff, that this is a push from our community to tell us, and I think that will happen through the petition. But I want to know that for sure. I just don't want to go too fast, I guess. 2 years ago, this wasn't even on our radar at all. Nothing, none of this. We didn't think anything about the high school at all. We knew we maybe needed some renovations over there, but we didn't think about this at all. So I just want to make sure that this is really what we're pushing for. This is the right direction. This is a lot of money, and again, it's not going to increase the taxes. It's like refinancing. It's pulling that extending that tax rate out for many years, and that would be the case no matter what we're going to do, because put up another elementary school would do. I mean, it's smart to probably keep that rate the same at all times, just to keep ourselves moving forward. But I just want to make sure that this is really the next step. I mean, we've seen enrollment numbers, and we've kind of seen how some of the smaller enrollment's kind of smaller in those lower class levels. So I just want to make sure that this is really coming from the public, that we're ready to do this. We've seen how things have happened here in Indianola and Warren County, so I want this to be positive. If it is what we want, if it is what the community wants, then I want to make sure the community's behind it and we get a yes vote the very first time. We don't need...
I also think as we continue to talk about growth in our community, this could be a turning point for growth in our community, right? When we have families that are coming in and looking at our facilities and our housing and our development and our resources and our support structure within the community, when we look 10 years down the road, maybe we end up getting 20 more families than we would have because of the facility and the money we put towards our buildings.
Sure.
So I mean, I agree with you, but just another thing to look at too, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
as we grow as a city,
Yeah.
the city's trying to
Yeah.
make us attractive. What are we doing in the school district to try to
Yeah.
make us attractive as
Yeah.
a school district?
And I think the community will tell us through that petition, is it going to be easy to get those signatures, or is it going to be difficult,
Yeah, I mean, I think it's worthwhile to put the petition out and then see where we are. I mean, I don't see a reason to not do that and just get the ball rolling, and then we'll decide in July.
Any thoughts, Ryan? Yep. Tim?
I just had one comment, and that was, sir, I think this is very well written, and I think that the visionary standpoint that you presented in this is something that, I didn't want to lose any recognition for that, because I think that while that may not be what's embraced by the public for this particular renovation, I do like your vision, and I could see potentially another elementary school or something like that in that same venue. I don't know what that looks like, but I think that I appreciate this, because I've worked with developers and you have that foresight. I just think that maybe it's a different school potentially, if I'm allowed to say that.
You can say whatever you want. All right, so, John, what do you think for verbiage here? And is it 2 votes before it's just one?
See the recommendations, and then I
See the
list them out.
Okay. So, just put on the front end of that recommendation, will receive the recommendations of the Indianola High School Community Task Force.
This is you, Donna. You're all over that.
Yeah.
You just said it just a second ago.
She's like, yep, that's what it is. So it'd be,
We recommend that we move forward with a petition to replace in place. We
Just
recommend
receive.
that,
You're just gonna receive their recommendations,
receive the task force
we're just
recommendation
gonna receive their recommendation.
and
Okay.
the 2 are the replacement.
as stated.
Yeah, as stated.
Okay, receive as stated, okay, that's what you can say.
Okay, so I recommend that we receive the task force recommendation to proceed with the petition.
So Donna made made a motion to receive the recommendation from the Indianola High School Community Task Force. So that's a motion.
Second.
Seconded by Tim. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Again, thank you guys for that. Thanks, Mr. Bethany. Thanks, Laura, for all your hard work on it. Next is the facilities project update. Any changes, gentlemen?
Not a lot, let me tell you.
Pretty much the same.
Renovation's getting close, we're getting closer all the time with the auditorium renovation. The auxiliary services, we're moving forward with documents and contract. And obviously Laura here with high school renovations. This, what we thought was gonna happen over winter break with those seclusion rooms, I mean, our piece is done, so now it's just these special padded systems that we're waiting on. And then the middle school, we approved that, they're processing, they're moving forward, getting things ready to go for that, because they will start immediately after school gets out, with the kids gone. Summer projects are the same. Emerson is just it's gonna be messy, but it's needed, and we need to get that through. And then in the future, that would be a possibility for our childcare to be in Emerson again. They have been there in the past. It's been not very often, but then it spreads out. They're going to different places rather than the same one all the time. So.
Any questions on anything there, you guys? Next is the policy committee meeting report. It's Ryan and Don.
I forgot my notes. We went through.
Well, they're just, we just talked about, was a lot of policies involving kids, their dress code, the search and seizure. I mean, they're all written out there. I don't know why we need to read them for you unless you just want us to.
Ray, will you go to 502.7 for me, please?
Are we doing a vote on this, or is it
On
first
the, not on the
reading?
policy committee meeting, but on the board policy would be first reading.
Okay.
So the policy committee itself, no, but the policies, yes.
502.1 through 502.1.
502.1 through.
Right.
10, yeah.
Which one did you want to see? So 502.7?
Jeff,
Smoking, drinking, and drugs.
Yeah, give me just a second here.
We did talk about a different, Mr. Seversman said, I can't remember exactly, but the first offense isn't going to be as severe as it has been.
Okay, because that's what I wanted to make sure that we
I thought that
look
was
at
probably
this.
what you're worried about, yes.
Okay.
That's just going to be like not a slap on the hands, but more than that.
Well, I
They're not
just-
going to be suspended
If we've got,
first time,
especially like
right?
young kids experimenting, to then take them out of school, I think, where now they're in a house by themselves with both parents working for 10 days, I think we're adding to the problem instead of solving the problem.
Right. And that's what they thought too.
And I've talked to
That's-
Mr. Brooks and stuff about that too. So are they like in discussion about that, or is this the new policy for that? Do you know?
I think part of that was in the handbook as far as
Yes.
what the actual disciplinary actions would be.
Yeah, so is that the policy committee that we need to review that, or how do I call for like,
Experience, but
how do I call for like a review of that, or how do we?
So each year, each building brings their student handbook to you for review and approval. And typically within there, there's been conversations between the middle school and high school for consistency with how they respond to those types of consequences, but also taking into account age differences. And so that is something that they could generally have outlined within those student handbooks. Sometimes too, they'll include information such as if you're looking at educational programs to address any infractions to help educate the students. Sometimes they'll mention those, but sometimes not by name, because those might change as they evolve and they select new ones. So
Those are yet to come.
Yeah, John, typically, at this point in time, the handbooks have been in front of the board.
It's coming in May, yeah.
Still be
The
coming.
next meeting.
Yeah, next meeting.
So that he will have made those changes in that high school handbook then.
Okay, so I just need to look through that. I do think you guys, when those come through, if we can all look at them, just maybe this specific policy, because if you compare us up against other school districts, we are one of the strictest as far as they're sitting home instead of in school. And I think in today's world, just where I used to work, it's pretty busy in there on a Tuesday afternoon, and it's a crowd that can kind of go the route. I just want to make sure when we've got a kid that gets in trouble for that, one, I think we need to probably find the why behind it, if there is something in the family that we really need to address. And also just keep them on our radar and don't just send them home. I think we can do better than that, than just.
And that's, I think they realize that. And
Okay.
they were talking about that. So, and they were going to include that in the handbook, but this is just the general policy.
Okay.
And they do the specifics in their handbook. Right.
Yes, but sometimes too, in the past, some of the practice has been just to provide you anything that's been changed, since those handbooks have been approved before. So this time we might need some directions to the principals to provide you the entire copy.
So is that something I'm allowed to ask for, or is that something that has to go through?
Typically, they should be linked into the website currently, so all parents and students have
Okay.
access to
So
it from
just
the
go
school
on there
sites
and
also for the current ones, but they can provide them to you also. But I'm not aware of any of their practices from the past too, where it was just the infraction consequence and nothing in follow-up. Because you have your counselors involved,
Right.
you have your mentoring programs involved, and quite a few things.
No, I know, I just know that we just got a new grant with the integrative, Warren County just got a new grant for the integrative provider network. And they have like the employee and family resources that do all these trainings for completely free. And is it time that we look into implementing some of those as well? And they're around anything from gambling to addiction to suicide to mindset training, I mean, stuff like that. And I know we have a lot of stuff in the schools with that, but, you know, we always kind of follow the Iowa Department of Public Health, and this is their grant, so is it worth at least looking forward to what is available in Warren County and what can be brought into our schools?
So the recommendation would be for the first reading of those policies, 502.1 through 502.10. Kind of feels like the same.
Sounds very similar.
Maybe it should be 101.
Make a recommendation to give a first reading approval for the 502.1 through 502.10 policies.
Motion made by Matt. Seconded by Donna. Any further discussion by the board? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next is the board calendar. Did we set a time, you guys, for the board workshop? I feel like I remember talking about it, but then did we ever get that?
I thought it was 5:30, but maybe, on the 31st, you mean?
Is it on there already?
It's on there,
Yeah.
from May 31st.
Okay.
But if you want to go earlier, we can do that as well.
What do you guys think? 5 or 5:30?
Is that Tuesday?
It's the day after Memorial Day.
Tuesday.
5 or 5:30?
I don't care at all. You guys work, so I'll work around whatever
Okay.
you guys want to do.
Rub it in, rub it in.
I could do
10.
I could do 5.
Match what everybody else decides.
Can you do 5? 5, okay. We'll switch that to 5.
But the meeting on the 24th is still at 5:30.
5:30. Regular board meeting, that's
Yeah.
Tuesday before.
What are we thinking on the work session? Hour and a half, 2 hours?
10.
We usually do 2.
2 hours, yeah. If not.
We're
We're
gonna
not-
invite
To come to that?
Yeah, what do you guys want, do you guys want to just have it, the 7 of us and Jonna? Do you guys want to have Ted? Do you guys?
Ted is probably moving that weekend,
Okay.
but we could probably get him on screen. And he might come, he may come.
Yeah, I mean, we could tell him we're having it, and if he'd come, that'd be
No, no,
great.
no.
I didn't know if you guys want to work on any visionary things before Ted gets here and then talk to Ted, or do you
That was
guys-
kind of the discussion at first, was to work as a board and then come together with him.
You guys want to do that?
I would, yeah. I feel like we should have our ducks in a row
Sure.
before we talk
Yeah.
strategic vision with the new superintendent.
That sounds.
Okay.
So just, I mean, John,
So it'll just be us, Jonna.
I can, and it'd be 5 o'clock start. Would you like a sack lunch?
Sure.
Sure. Part of your pay.
it is, it's part of this, it's part of the pay.
Lasagna,
Yeah.
rhubarb?
And here's where I like the beef from.
100%.
Gibson do a nice job.
She has you growing to try to supply.
Don't start freezing.
Finance committee meeting.
Okay, I will get lunches.
And then, is there wasn't there a time we were gonna meet when Art usually does his, he was talking about that the last board meeting, is that in May or is that in June?
To do what?
Where he does his, like a thank you type thing?
He thinks he can do that in June, so that was.
Is he still wanting
Typically,
to
he
do
would do
that?
it in May, but he knew that.
So that'll be next month's calendar.
Right, right.
Okay. High school graduation. Yes, no,
No.
yes,
No.
no. I don't remember what Ben said.
He was working on a baseball schedule, but he didn't know
Okay.
last
okay.
time.
And Jeff sent some notes there about the,
Today.
no, this was like last week. I think it was about the wall of distinction, a reception
Okay, wait a
before-
minute.
Yeah,
Is that,
215 on the 25th,
That's the 25th or something, yeah.
okay.
retirements,
I-
teacher
Well, there's
retirements.
something
No, there's
to do
some-
on the day of graduation.
Of graduation. It's the wall of distinction, I thought. Do you know who's being nominated? Or?
I don't think we're supposed to say that publicly.
Oh, okay, okay.
Oh, we're not.
This is
I thought I'd throw that out there real quick, just based on.
That's
Don't do anything.
Another conversation.
Yeah, but
If you wanted to say it, I mean. what-
No, we're live.
Radio broadcast.
Rocky McKay.
So, are we keeping still the 2 meetings through June, July, and August?
No.
So what do we have,
June,
can you
July 1,
so,
And one.
so June 14th,
14th.
June 14th would be a normal,
That'd be your June meeting, and then July 19th. And then August, you go back to the 2.
You mean July 12th?
Actually, we made it to the 3rd, Monday, to try and give more coverage, or, spread it out a little more, so.
And then, how about a
not a good one.
going away reception for Mark?
On June 14th, we've got like a 3 to 5 programming here in this building.
June
Again.
14th,
For the record, he does not want this.
That's a Tuesday, so that's the same
It's
day.
the same day as a board meeting, so then he'll need to come to the board meeting, so it wraps
Is
up.
that the same day as his cooking thing then?
That's what we'd have to figure out.
That's what I was saying, that seems like a lot.
I think he's trying to create something.
Okay, I just wanna make sure all
Wait,
I
that.
what
think he's
time
just
is
trying to
this?
create a distraction.
what time's his reception?
What time is that?
I think it's
reception?
3 to 5.
That reception, so it's for the community and, okay, that's what I thought, but.
But
We've
then,
held it, when Cindy Slauson retired, we held it over here. It's very nice. People can sit or stand, or it's enough room for people to mill around and visit when they.
isn't there a community meet between our superintendent, the
I
city
think Amy's
manager?
working on that.
We don't have a date, or we do?
June 16th, we just had Sodexo at Simpson verify that it was available just this morning, so, the 16th.
Morning or afternoon?
Evening-ish, yeah. The 16th.
That's a welcome
Of June,
for
yeah.
superintendent
Yeah.
and city manager.
Yeah, and I believe we're going to invite Simpson's president because she started during COVID and there wasn't really a meet the community part of that for her, so I think we're gonna try and do the trifecta.
What time is that?
I don't know yet. We just got the date confirmed today. I wanna say that we have it reserved from, it's reserved from 6 to 9. So I don't know if we'll start right at 6 or what that'll look like, but.
Those types of things we can just go to because, you know, as long as you're not like huddling in the corner talking to each
That's
other.
what I wondered, yeah.
Right.
That's what I'm gonna do.
Yeah, yeah.
I have to get the dates on before I become the chauffeur. Get
Okay.
everything on.
Max, we got all of ours. All right, next board agenda. Where's, oh no, that's the, yeah. Assuming you said the high school handbook, middle school handbooks will be on now.
We'll probably add, yeah, they look like they've not been added, yeah. I think that last year they were delayed for whatever reason to be in June and we could
Okay.
try to get them in.
Okay,
So, yeah.
all right. Anything else under other?
Make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Motion made by Matt, seconded by Ryan. All those in favor say aye. Aye. We are adjourned.
Are we